Part 0, Introduction to Twitter Discourse. On Sunday, July 15th at 4:38 a.m., a fellow Twitter user like me said, and I quote, "Nigerian kids who have a lot to say about racial problems and no one gives a flying F word about your opinions on race. Someone who's never faced any real racism has a mouthful, STFU. STFU. Anyways, first off, I just want to say that I do not agree with this statement. Nigerians are allowed to give their opinions on racism, even if they don't face racism on a day-to-day basis. They are allowed to speak on what racism is and give their opinions, their 2 cents, their 3 cents, their dollar, some might say. But I just feel like this was just not a necessary tweet. This is not a problem that we have in society. Nigerians talking about racism. How is that an issue? I don't know. Anyways, that's not why I'm making this video. I'm making this video because someone quote tweeted this by saying, if you think racism does not affect you in Nigeria, go to an interview in a bank dressed in agbada and fila. If you don't know what agbada is a traditional Yoruba attire. That's all. It's a traditional Yoruba attire. And fila are those sneaker shoes. That's where I come in to the picture. You know me. I just had to say something. And I said, this is a result of colonialism and white supremacy and not racism. And that's when all hell broke loose. I have people quote tweeting my tweets, calling me names when I'm right, and they are so wrong. They're so wrong. They're so loud and so wrong. But I don't blame them. We're going to go back in time, travel to the very beginning of what caused me to be dragged for filth on Twitter. And we're going to start by talking about Anthony T. Browder. Anthony T. Browder is a researcher, a historian, and a Black writer who told us that, he says in his work, that it all began in the 13th century, 1441 exactly, when Prince Henry of Portugal was gifted 12 Africans. Yeah, that sounded weird. He was gifted 12 Africans in his court. And just like dominoes falling, this led to the transatlantic slave trade, colonialism, and white supremacy. Part 1, the struggle for Africa. The Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885 is one of the most disgusting events that have graced humanity. People in suits that don't have any rights to do so whatsoever threw the African map on the table and divided it amongst themselves. They did not just do that, they took it upon themselves to travel all the way from Europe across the ocean to Africa and colonize Africa. In the early 20th century, most of Africa was under European colonial rule. Colonial rule includes, but is not limited to, administrative control, economic exploitation, and cultural imposition by European powers in Africa. Under white supremacist regimes, Africans were often taught to devalue their own values and place white ideologies above their own. This can lead to looking at yourself through the lens of colonizers and trying to appease to white people, and in the same breath can cause intraracial discrimination and internalized racism. Sigh. Colonial rulers often use this method to create ethnic tension by favoring one group in Africa over the other group, causing disdain and just an easier way for them to exploit Africans for their products, for their resources, for their economic Colonial rulers often exacerbate or create ethnic tensions by favoring one group over another, providing them with more resources, education, and positions of power. This favoritism can create a deep-seated hatred for one another and make it easier for white people and for colonial masters to access and penetrate and destroy African societies from within. During this period, European colonizers imposed a social hierarchy that treated lighter-skinned individuals over darker-skinned ones. Black people who looked like or who were closer to whiteness were treated far better and giving privileges over black people who were dark skinned and farther away from whiteness. This system was rooted in the belief that whiteness was superior, and it permeated colonial societies, affecting social status, access to resources, and overall treatment. Colonizers often treated lighter-skinned black individuals more favorably, sometimes granting them privileges and roles of authority over darker-skinned individuals. This preferential treatment causes division within black communities and makes it easier, like I said, to fostering a sense of superiority amongst lighter skinned individuals and a sense of inferiority amongst darker skinned individuals. European colonizers propagated negative stereotypes about African features. Like, that's why we have colorism, featureism, texturism. They placed all the things that were inherently black below and the things that were closer to whiteness above. So that's why we have people today who hate their 4C hair, who want to look more Eurocentric, getting nose jobs, getting face reconstructive surgeries. Obviously, these are like extreme examples, but we have as little as skin bleaching to look lighter skinned, just so you can, be deemed as beautiful in society. All these are byproducts, and not just limited to these, but they are the byproducts of colonialism, and they are different from what racism is. So we're going to talk about what racism is. White supremacy is the belief that white people are above every other race. It is the belief that they are superior to every other racial background. It promotes the belief that white people should dominate society and maintain control over other racial groups. It is a systemic and institutionalized form of racism that seeks to maintain and enforce control over the social, political, and economic dominance of everybody, with the white people being ahead and being on top of this hierarchy. If this is society, white people are here in ideal white supremacy. And yes, like I don't know why I say ideal white supremacy, because we live in a white supremacy society today. That's why white people very much control every aspect of the world today. And it sucks, but we need to obviously dismantle white supremacy, because it doesn't help anybody but white people. And yeah, it sucks. Anyways, white supremacy can be seen in policies, laws, and practices that privilege white people over others, as well as in hate groups and movements that openly advocate for white dominance. We already know about the Triple K group. Yeah, honestly, white supremacy can be very subtle sometimes. It can be hidden in, the need to code switch because you have a different accent than is accepted, or the need to go by an English name, or the need to even have English name as Africans or as people of different racial groups. But it can also be very extreme in the case of shootings, hate crimes, and so many other aspects that I will not be mentioning in this video, but maybe I will be adding it to my description or somewhere else. With terrorist groups like the KKK, Ku Klux Klan, whose main mantra is just to promote and make sure white dominance is put in place. In contrast, racism can involve any racial group being prejudiced against. Racism is a broader concept involving prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism directed against individuals or groups based on race or ethnicity. Now, the difference between racism and white supremacy is racism is very individualistic. It's obviously there is systemic racism, but racism is a very minuscule aspect of what white supremacy is. I actually have the perfect tweet for this because people in my life have sense, and I don't know, this tweet makes so much sense. Racism can involve individuals or systemic practices that disadvantage people of certain racial groups. Racism can manifest in various ways, including social exclusion, economic disparities, and unequal treatment in education, employment, and the justice system. There's so many examples of different ways that Black people especially are discriminated against, especially when we look at the news or like the policies in place in so many parts of the world against Black people. There's a lot of anti-Blackness in the world. Now, white supremacy and racism can be systematic, can be engrossed in society, but white supremacy is a more organized and deliberate system that maintains white dominance. It places whiteness on this pedestal and cannot be diffused by one person, cannot be like dismantled by a small institution because of how ingrained it is into our society, into the fabric of our society. It's literally knit into our, it's really tattooed into our society. Racism can be addressed in, let's say, a workplace, but white supremacy cannot be addressed in a workplace or in a small institution because of how systemic and how ingrained it is into our society. So that's the difference between white supremacy and racism. They are very different. They are two sides of the same coin. They look alike, but they are very different in a very, very subtle way. So when I said that this, like getting rejected from a job in Nigeria by another Black person when competing with other Black people because you were dressed in a traditional attire is white supremacy and not racism, it's very simple to understand that two people of the same race cannot be racist to each other. Two people of the same race cannot be racist to each other, because the whole point of racism is you think you're better than me because you're a different race than I am, and you think my race is beneath you. White supremacy is whether we're the same race or not, as long as I adhere or I adhere more to like white ideologies, I am better than you. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I will be making more videos very soon. I'm really like going into my final year of uni and I'm very excited to be done with uni. And yeah, maybe my classes will be interesting and give me like thought-provoking thoughts and I get to like talk more about my thoughts, and you guys get to listen to my beautiful brain and tell me how pretty I am in the comments. Heart. Goodbye. Bye.